So my name is Valerie Boyd. I'm an associate professor of journalism at the University of Georgia. I teach literary journalism, narrative nonfiction, arts reviewing, and I'm also the Charlene Hunter Galt Distinguished Writer in Residence at the Grady College at the University of Georgia. And I am talking about Alice Walker today because I am currently curating and editing a book called Gathering Blossoms Under Fire, The Journals of Alice Walker. And in this book, I am compiling, curating, annotating Alice Walker's journals, which she started in 1962 when she was 18. She's now 72, so there are more than 50 years of journals here at the archives at Emory University in the Rose Library, Manuscript and Rare Book Library. And so I've been working with Alice's journals for about 2.5 years on this project, which is due out in 2017. Okay, so I want to read an excerpt from the biography of Alice Walker. It's called Alice Walker, A Life by Evelyn C. White, who is a good friend of mine. Evelyn C. White spent several years researching and writing this biography of Alice Walker. And there's a wonderful section in here, a wonderful chapter, where she talks about Alice's initial response when she learned that she had won the Pulitzer Prize in fiction for The Color Purple. And in fact, she was the first black woman to win a Pulitzer Prize in fiction. And I'll read this excerpt. Alice's immediate response to the news that she won the Pulitzer Prize was colored by two factors. Oblivious to the particulars of the publishing industry, she was unaware that the award was granted to writers other than journalists. And she did not and would not have lobbied Harcourt to submit The Color Purple to the Pulitzer jury had she known. Nor had she sought the novel's nomination for the 1983 American Book Award in Fiction, which it had also won the previous week. With regard to prizes, Alice was satisfied that she'd served with openness and admiration as a medium for her characters. And so deep was her gratitude for their presence as she crafted The Color Purple that she'd wept in her partner's arms after writing the last page. That she'd rendered the lives of Shug, Celie, and Mr. with authenticity and compassion was all the reward she needed. Given her disinterest in prizes, Alice responded with both shock and annoyance to the reporter who phoned her at about 10 a.m. seeking a comment about her milestone achievement. I thought it was a joke, and a mean-spirited one at that, she remembered. I was completely stunned. No sooner had she put down the receiver than the phone rang again. This time the call was from a friend who let out a congratulatory cheer. It was no prank, no trick, no crank call. As the flood of phone calls continued, Alice offered a response that would subsequently be quoted in newspapers nationwide. I feel really happy for the people in The Color Purple, she wrote. They'll really like this. The characters are composites of people I love from my childhood, my grandmothers and my really stylish aunts, the ones who would visit from up north, wearing those furs with animal heads and little beady eyes. Actually, I think life is the award. I love being a black Southern woman. All three add incredible enlargements to being a writer. Well, I'll just say that to me, the significance of The Color Purple winning the Pulitzer Prize has to do with the fact that the book celebrates these regular, ordinary, uneducated, or I would say self-educated black women. to say that these characters' lives are not only worthy of literature, but worthy of the highest award, one of the highest awards in literature, just really gave a kind of sense of, further gravitas to not only the novel, but to the lives of regular, ordinary, self-taught, country black folk. And to me, that was extraordinary. I was a college student when The Color Purple came out. And I remember reading the novel and having been exposed to Alice Walker when I was in high school through my advanced placement English class. I had read some of her earlier work, and when The Color Purple came out, I was in college and was taking African American literature classes with Professor Leon Forrest, himself a great American novelist. But to read the book and to see how far it went in terms of the portrayal of a friendship between black women, a relationship between black women that was so critical to survival and upliftment and a sense of self-love. The book was really revolutionary in so many ways. And for that kind of book to be awarded with one of the highest prizes in literature was just a real affirmation of what those of us who loved the book and read the book and knew that it was telling a true story from our own kind of ancestral lineage. It was just icing on the cake to have it win this high literary prize. So in editing Alice Walker's journals, it's more than 50 years of journals that cover the span of her life from the early 60s to the present, pretty much. And, in these journals, what you see is a woman becoming herself. So, in the early journals when she's a college student in her, teens, late teens, you see her, struggling with, understanding other writers and figuring out which writers' work she most loves and have that work will have the most influence on her. You see her struggling just like any other college student, like grappling with, the material that she's confronting and what it means for her and her life. And then in her 20s, you see her really kind of deciding to leave her marriage and become a single mother and really working out financially how she's going to afford to do that. And it's interesting because at that point, she does not know that she's going to become Alice Walker, iconic American writer. She does not know that she's going to write The Color Purple, which will win a Pulitzer Prize and become a movie and, provide great, financial security for her. She doesn't know any of that. So she's really trying to put together $10,000 in the early 1970s as a yearly income in order to take care of herself and her daughter as a single mother. So you see those kinds of struggles in the journals as she is really becoming herself. And the other thing that's interesting about the journals is that you see her beginning many of her book projects in the journals. The books that we know, you see the opening lines, for instance, of The Color Purple in one of the notebooks that was a journal. And she often started her writing this way: drafts of essays, drafts of novels, drafts of short stories, drafts of poetry in the journals. And later that material, would migrate into other notebooks and become actual manuscripts, handwritten manuscripts. And she wrote out her manuscripts by hand in cursive as she wrote in the journals. So as I'm going through the journals, there are moments when I'm reading a journal entry and then there's a break, and then the next thing is words that look familiar to me, and they're familiar to me because I've read them in her books. And that is the way many of her books, including The Color Purple, got their start, in the pages of the journals themselves. So those are some of the exciting things about my work in the journals that I'm looking forward to sharing with readers when the book comes out. So, yeah.